Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the sea land of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, and Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying. Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is the stumbling block of their iniquity. In the news from the BBC, published one day ago by Annabelle Liang. World Bank: global rate hikes could trigger 2023 recession. Interest rate hikes by central banks around the world could trigger a global recession in 2023, the World Bank has said. Now, this is an erroneous statement by the World Bank, because the world, especially the US and the EU, have both been experiencing more than 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, which by conventional financial definition is a recession. Central banks have raised interest rates or rates with a degree of synchronicity not seen over the past 5 decades to tackle soaring prices, it said. Rising rates makes borrowing more expensive to try to bring down the pace of price rises. But it also makes loans more costly, which can slow economic growth. Why? Because high interest rates forces businesses to cut back on employees, which then causes the unemployment rate within a country to spike. This then creates a deflationary environment due to the lack of velocity. Velocity is the flow of money within an economy. An economy's GDP, which stands for its gross domestic product, is measured by its velocity, which again is the flow of money, or the circulation, or the pace of circulation of money within an economy. If there is little to no velocity within a country's economy, it will experience a deflationary setting. This is why the Federal Reserve, that is the U.S.'s central bank, and various other central banks across the globe have been aggressively increasing interest rates. It is so that they could engineer a deflationary environment to fight against stubbornly high inflation. However, inflation as it stands is too out of control. So they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. So even if they increase interest rates, it will only drive the economies around the globe, especially the bigger economies of the US and Europe, into more deeper recessions and into debt crisis, because many will begin to default on their debts, not just consumers but also businesses and corporations. That is why they've been increasing interest rates, and in doing so very swiftly and aggressively, it will only drive the economy into a deeper recession. Keyword, a deeper recession, because the economies around the globe are already in recession, which, again, by economic conventional definition, is 2 or more consecutive quarters of negative GDP. So all this tacky talk of, oh, we're going to go into a recession. Listen, man, we're already in a recession. Okay? Reading on. The warning from the World Bank comes ahead of monetary policy meetings by the U.S. Federal Reserve and Bank of England, which are expected to increase key interest rates next week. So they're getting ready to increase interest rates again next week. U.S. mortgage rates hit 14-year high as inflation soars. World Bank boss warns of global recession threat. On Thursday, the World Bank said the global economy was in its steepest slowdown following a post-recession recovery since 1970. It said a study found that the world's 3 largest economies, the US, China, and the Euro area, have been slowing sharply. Under the circumstances, even a moderate hit to the global economy over the next year could tip it into recession, it said. Signs of economic difficulties are all emerging on Thursday. Delivery giant FedEx warned investors that a sharp and unexpected slowdown in activity, especially in Asia and Europe, would cause revenue to be hundreds of millions of dollars short of forecasts. And FedEx is one of the major giants of the transportation and the e-commerce of goods across the globe, and it is used by major corporations and businesses. So FedEx not doing too good is a very bad sign for global economies and for consumers. Okay? The firm said it planned to close dozens of offices and reduce service in response to the drop in demand. This will only add to a spike in the unemployment rate. So get ready to experience a poor delivery quality and timing. You get the gist. The news sparked a widespread sell-off of FedEx shares, sending them down more than 20%. Shares in other delivery firms, including Amazon, Deutsche Post, and Royal Mail, also fell. In the face of recession risk, which we're already in, by the way, the World Bank called on central banks to coordinate their actions and communicate policy decisions clearly to reduce the degree of tightening needed. Inflation, which is the rate at which prices increase, and also the rate at which the value of the currency decreases, hit a 40-year high in the US and UK in recent months, because they'll just tell you, oh, inflation is when prices increase. Right, it is, but guess what? As prices increase, the value of the dollar decreases, the value of your money decreases. So really, inflation is a depreciation in the value of the currency. Hence the reason why a lot of things are, expensive. So reading on, it says, this, and by the way, real money is gold and silver and cattle, not the fiat money that we use. This was driven by higher demand as pandemic restrictions eased and as the war in Ukraine boosted energy, fuel, and food prices. In response, central bank policymakers have raised interest rates to cool demand from households and businesses. However, big rate increases increase the risk of recession as it can cause an economy to slow. Central banks do not typically run policy decisions by their counterparts. They have in the past, however, coordinated their actions to support the global economy. In 2007, a global financial crisis was precipitated by a subprime mortgage crisis in the US, which the US is experiencing all over again as we speak. This developed into a full-blown crash after the collapse of the Lehman Brothers investment bank in September 2008. A month later, the Fed, along with the European Central Bank and central banks in Canada, Sweden, and Switzerland, jointly lowered their key interest rates. They said in a statement that the intensification of the financial crisis has augmented the downside risks to growth and thus has diminished further the upside risks to price stability. Some easing of global monetary conditions is therefore warranted, they added. This concludes the article. And so again, this is the book of Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed, which is a metaphor for the people taking their money and casting it into the streets because it will be worthless. Because obviously, people don't perform their day-to-day transactions with gold and silver. Now, some people do, depending on where they're at, but for the very most part, people use fiat currency. So this is to say that they are going to take the money that they use, and then eventually gold and silver will become necessary at some point, but even that is going to be casted into the streets. So they're going to cast their silver and their gold into the streets because it's going to be of no value in this man's system. See, understand that gold and silver are intrinsic, meaning that they have inherent value, whereas fiat currency is extrinsic, meaning that it receives its value externally through people's trust in it, through their faith in it. But many have been losing faith in fiat, especially in the dollar, which is the leading reserve currency. Okay, many have been ditching the dollar and moving away to other forms of currency, primarily digital currency, because the Lord is setting the stage across the globe for when Esau Edom mandates the C. Ragamuffin, okay, the MOTB. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh, right? So the money that people use today, including silver and gold, will not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. Because, again, it's going to come a point when they're going to cast their silver in the streets and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh, because you can't bargain with the Lord with your money. The Lord created gold and silver. He created all things. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels. Why? Because your money won't be able to bring you comfort during the days of evil. You can't pay somebody that's going to be hunting for food, that's going to be starving, money that's going to be worthless during those times, to prevent harm from coming upon yourself. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, meaning their minds. They will comfort, peace, satisfaction. Because remember, destruction cometh. and they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. And when they're going to be promised safety, that's when sudden destruction is going to come upon them as travail upon a womb with child, and they shall not escape. Now they fill their bowels because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. So these things are coming. In other news, headlines from the RT: 2 consecutive quakes rock Taiwan. France to reap worst crop harvest in decades. Let's read some of these articles briefly. Lord's willing. This season's crop is expected to fall to the lowest in 30 years due to adverse weather. In other concise words, get ready to experience famine. French farmers are harvesting their smallest corn crop in more than 3 decades, following the worst drought in at least 500 years that has hit the continent, Bloomberg reported this week, citing the country's agriculture ministry. According to the report, France's production of the staple grain used to feed chickens and pigs will drop 25% to 11.6 million tons, which is the lowest since 1990. The adverse weather has reportedly reduced harvests of almost all crops from last year apart from oil needs. No region is spared from the drop in yield, the agriculture ministry said. The smaller crops in France, which is one of Europe's agricultural heavyweights, could drive soaring food prices even higher. Fields in Germany and Romania, other key EU producers, have also suffered from drought. According to a report from French-based Strategy Grains, EU wheat crops will also be reduced this year. The agency estimates that the 2022-2023 wheat crop will be around 124.1 million tons, compared to 129.8 million tons in 2021-2022. It also lowered its forecast for the total grain crop by 2.5 million tons from its August estimates to 264.6 million tons, which is 25.7 million tons less than in 2021. While the agency noted that grain prices have largely fallen, high production costs may render this decrease insignificant. Prices in the coming months will depend on the likelihood of an EU recession, which could lead to a further drop in demand as well as a possible increase in grain exports from Ukraine. This concludes the article. In other news, the U.S. quietly stepping up efforts to shut down Guantanamo. This is very, very interesting. I'll leave the link to all these news articles, Lord's willing, in the description box of this lesson. Uranium price soars due to power supply crisis. Canadians' Wolf suffers biggest drop on record. U.S. becoming a less developed country report. The U.S. is sliding down the rankings of sustainability, developed nations. According to the UN, the U.S. is falling behind its developed nation peers in checking the boxes of progress, according to a recent report from the United Nations Office of Sustainable Development. The country that last year ranked 32nd out of 193 UN number states has dropped 11 places in a single year and now trails even Ukraine and Cuba on the list, coming in just ahead of Bulgaria. The rates are based on a country's progress in fulfilling the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. 17 metrics meant to epitomize societal progress. They include concrete achievements like clean water and sanitation and zero hunger, alongside less defined aims like quality education and responsible consumption and production, but all are described on the UN's website as critical to implementing the organization's 2030 agenda. for sustainable development, something all member nations have agreed to do. I'm not going to read the rest of this article as the point has already been read. The U.S. is basically becoming a third world country. I will leave its link in the description box of this lesson, Lord is willing. Power prices in Germany forecast to soar. So this will be it for now, Lord's willing, until the next. Let's get Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 25 and 26, and then conclude the lesson, Lord's willing. Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 25, destruction cometh, and they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. So when destruction comes upon the people, because of their great pride, they'll then attempt to seek peace. However, there shall be none. Mischief shall come upon mischief, and rumor shall be upon rumor. Bad news after bad news. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And it's only going to continue to press down upon the minds of the people. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet. Oh, we have to find out why these things are happening, why they're going to happen. Or we remember those guys that used to be on the street corners preaching the Bible, even on the internet. We have to find those guys out. We have to seek them out to find the answers. However, during those times, it's going to be too late, because Scripture says that wit is going to withdraw itself. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest and counsel from the ancients. So T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, Joyce Myers, all these different false prophets that you people look up to in the world, they won't have the answers, because even they themselves are going to be affected. Even they themselves won't have the answers. So with that, I'll conclude this lesson here. Lord's willing, was edifying to the elect. Until the next, Lord's willing, I say Shalom. Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rcha Kodash, Brakatam to the elect. Shalom.